because our deepest wounds often reveal our greatest purpose. Welcome to the Court of Connection. I have a special guest here today. I'm really excited to have you here, Justin. I've watched Justin's content for a while and have felt very drawn to it. It is very clear that he has had a massive spiritual awakening, Kundalini awakening, and I have so many questions and I'm excited to hear about, kind of what that journey's been like for you.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah.
To be here.
I haven't seen Justin in, when was the last time I saw you? It's been a while.
It's been such a long time.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know. It's been years, right?
Yeah. And I just randomly came across your TikTok and I was like,
I know. Was that like a For You page thing?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. He's on another level now. And I kind of I zoned in, but so for those that don't know you yet, can you share a little bit about your journey and what it's like, what it was like before the awakening?
Yeah.
What do you want to share?
Yeah. So my life had, really been full of challenges. I don't know. I kind of just felt, which I know is a thing that a lot of people feel, especially a lot of people that struggle with addiction and things like that really feel out of place and things like that. That rings true for my story. What I realized kind of through my awakening is that we all exist at a little bit of a different frequency. And looking back on, I believe we come in at a little bit of a different frequency, and some of us come in much more elevated. And I actually believe that this is just my perception, but I believe that people that struggle with addiction are more elevated souls. If you notice that, when people sober up, they are the type of people that they kind of light up the room, because they are existing at this elevated frequency. And I just find that, for me, it was just my frequency and the way that I operate in this world naturally was very, from day one in kindergarten was, I was attacked, and literally attacked by groups of people that ganged up on me. And so that it was a very intense kind of bullying. And it was really it wasn't based on anything I was doing. I was actually kind of just keeping to myself, but now I see it as my frequency. So, and that pattern has kind of played out throughout my life where it's this, just that led me eventually, because I always just kind of felt on the outside and I was observing, and I was struggling. I could put on a smile and just kind of, but I think I really was in this internal struggle for a long time. And really that led to some of my darkest days were after I relapsed after 7 years sober. So I went back into the world of substances and all of that. And I had so much shame around it because I was so identified with my time sober, and it completely just because it was I was buying into this idea that oh no, I threw all that away. And I had so much shame because but really that whole process, I left behind 8 years of a clientele because I felt, even though I was in a dark place and I was doing substances and that played into me leaving, it was also exactly what I needed. I needed to walk away from this thing that I loved doing hair, but it was just this deep, knowing that I needed to follow this calling to go to Asheville, North Carolina, which is what I did. And at first though, it felt like I just destroyed my whole life, because I walked away from that clientele and then I got heavier into drugs. And while all that was happening, so it was my external world was being destroyed, but it was also kind of the dismantling of everything that I identified myself with to really be able to remember who I truly am outside of all of those things. But at first, my identity was still wrapped in all of those things. So even though they were gone, I just felt like I was nothing, because I'm oh, well, now I don't have any of these things. So that was kind of that whole process, which led me to the point where I was just in such a dark place towards the end, because the thing is with addiction and with the thing that I was going through was very much like, um, I was shaming myself on such a level that I don't think that other people realize, like, because a lot of times people get into shaming people that are, oh, you went back out and you did this again, and so I was receiving that, but I was shaming myself way more than anybody outside of me could have, so my inner world was so incredibly dark, especially for that last like year or two. It was daily, thinking of really just awful ways to take myself off, this planet. I didn't want to be here anymore. And then I went from that to, then I was attacked by a police officer in October of 2023, which set off my Kundalini awakening. It kind of set it in motion. And that whole entire situation was, I believe 100% that it was 100% unavoidable. Because I truly wasn't like, and here's the thing, like, had I just gone back at that time into just the traditional recovery space and not kind of looked from a deeper perspective, I think I would have only looked at my part and not been able to see that what happened to me was actually very, in the physical, was very wrong. Like because I wasn't fighting back. I wasn't doing, but it was what I was shown after my Kundalini awakening was that this is something that was unavoidable, that I had to go through so that I could also speak on, a lot of the corruption that exists within this system, because the entire system came against me, and they gaslight you and try to make you believe that something happened other than what actually happened. And, but now I truly am grateful for that experience but I mean, yeah, getting attacked by, rubbed into the concrete,
Wow.
And choked by this police officer. My mom was on the phone, heard the whole thing. She was trying to find her recorder. So that was kind of, and then my dog, who was the only thing that I kind of held on to. That was the last thing I was holding on to, that just like that unconditional love that I got from her. So she died that month as well. That same month that I got attacked. So like darkest month of my life. And I remember there was this moment where my dad was going to Dallas. I was staying with my dad at that time, and I had just had to put Marley down. And so I asked my dad, my dad was going to Dallas. And then I had this thought in my mind. It was that moment of choosing to listen to that inner voice or like staying there. And it was that moment where I had a plan, like in my head. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't, without Marley, like there's no way that I can do this, which might sound crazy to some, but it was her unconditional love. And I hadn't found that unconditional, and what that letting her go was kind of setting in motion was me finding the unconditional love that lives within me and learning to hold myself and love myself in the way that that space that she held for me, as wild as that sounds. Yeah. But it's just like, so that was the darkest month of my life, October of 2023. And it all kind of came to a head. And then that set my Kundalini awakening in motion. And then I had the Kundalini awakening in December, December 22nd, or 23rd, December 22nd. It was December 22nd, 2023. Woke up in the middle of the night for that. And I mean, literally, because it's a rapid movement of energy through the body, and it felt like my body was shattering. And I kind of had this, like, it was like a life review type of thing where it was more that I was remembering the things that are important in this life, and how all this other stuff that I was stressed about was really not, it was not important. Like I was just this awareness that I've wasted so much time, like living in fear and, all attached to all those things. And so yeah, just kind of awakening to that. And then that shift, though, was so dramatic and very confusing at first. But then it's been now, almost 2 years. So this 2 years has been really integrating that experience and learning to, because at first it was like, it was so hard to exist like on this earth and do the things that we do in this society at first, and so it's just been kind of grounding that experience and really integrating it and learning to kind of operate as elevated version of myself within this society, you know?
Yeah. So you didn't do like plant medicine or anything to ignite this, or did you?
So yes, plant medicine played a role, this is the way that I see it. It played a role in, because the thing with plant medicine is that it's different. It's different for everybody. It's not for everybody. It was something that was calling me. And the way that I see it, my intention going in, because for me, I really needed to, break through a lot of stuck patterns in the way that I thought about things in order for me to continue evolving and elevating. So plant medicine going in, like one of my main intentions was to break through stuck patterns of thinking. And it definitely helped me in that process. It was not the thing that set off my Kundalini awakening, but I believe that it played a role in breaking down stuck patterns. But it's all about the intention, and it's all about the integration. And it's not a path that's for everybody, but I think that there's a lot of like negative feelings about it, because there is people that end up using it just to escape, or they end up using it, you know what I mean? It's just like anything. It can be a tool that can also, be used as an escape. But it was definitely not that. I was completely sober when I had the Kundalini awakening. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that was the most powerful, and then for 4 months, that's like, all of these things that were coming through. But no, I wasn't under the influence of anything.
I got you.
Yeah.
See, it wasn't like I went to this circle, then it ignited this thing happening.
Yeah.
And like kind of had to integrate.
And it was more through my surrender of, because there was points in my life where I was like, oh, I want to reach this point. I want to be enlightened. I want to be at this place, And it was actually like before the Kundalini awakening, it was like, you know what? I'm a mess, and this is where I'm at. And this is, you know what I mean? And surrendering the need to be anywhere other than where I was in that moment.
Yeah.
Then it happened through the full surrender. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it also, like, Kundalini awakening is not, I don't believe that that's, you have to really be prepared to go through something. And it can be because it's so intense, it can be very confusing. And also there's not a lot of support. But for people that go through that process, I think it is important to kind of, if you can find people that have had that experience, to kind of guide you through. I didn't have that. And I was trying to talk to people that had never been through it. And so I kind of just had to navigate those waters on my own, me and spirit, just kind of trying to figure it out. So,
well, you said so many profound things. I think the one thing that I wanted to go revisit was, there was always this pattern in your life of feeling like rejected by a group of people, right? Or feeling like an outcast from a group of people.
Yeah.
I firmly believe, and this is just my belief, that our soul chooses the wounds that we have, that when we come down here to work through for a soul correction, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you had those trends throughout your life was like, okay, this is a major theme to be transmuted.
Oh, 100%.
And alchemized. And so, and for me, a lot of mine was like people pleasing, poor boundaries, like low self-worth, like over identification with the body, right? Being someone who was in a larger body for most of my life, and like feeling so, you know what I mean? And like having to push through all those things, and every experience in my life led me to that same wound coming up, So that was interesting.
For sure. And the rejection, I find that's also very common as well in people. I notice that theme a lot in people that struggle with addiction, because we tend to, most of the people that I've met felt like outsiders, in some way, shape, or form. And so it's kind of like, when you get rejected a lot, we can get into people pleasing really easily, and that has been, my biggest challenge, but then it's like learning to kind of love myself and really, but that's been one of my biggest challenges. Overcoming the people pleasing, and forget where I was going with that.
That's okay. But no, I mean, that brings up a good point, is like, our job on this on this planet is to learn how to parent ourselves.
Yeah,
right?
for
Like
sure.
I have to be the person that can take care of myself, regulate and take care of myself.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And God's not going to do that for me either. I have to learn how to self-regulate. I have to learn how to detach from, like this need to have everybody
Right.
understand me.
Yeah,
and
for
you know what I
sure.
mean?
Mm.
Which leads me into the next question.
Yeah.
What was that like after having the awakening,
Mhm.
with friends, with family, and just feeling in this place of just, feeling totally different or viewing the world in a way that you never had?
Mm. Yeah, it's been challenging, which is why I've been in a lot of solitude. But I find that like even if a lot of people are awakening at this time, and it looks different for everybody, and for some it's a little it's a kind of a slower process of perspective shifts happening and things like that. But I find that a lot of times it's just like learning to listen to that intuitive, like learning to listen to the intuition, learning to listen to those nudges that tell us, because like for me, at first I was trying to just be back in the same things that I was in. And it was very confusing at first because my perspective was so different, And so I had to really kind of remove myself from um, groups of people, for a little bit, and kind of go into solitude, which was challenging at first because it was like I had this storyline in my head that was like isolation is bad, isolation is dangerous. But for me, it was something that, and that's the thing, it's different for everybody. And that's why it's so important to listen to the intuition, because for me, it was something that was absolutely necessary for me to be able to develop my own unique perspective and be able to hold that and know that like it's okay that I view things differently than other people, that my perspective is different, and I'm okay that their perspective is that way. I don't need to change it, but to be able to go into groups of people and be able to be authentic and true to myself, and that, and what it is that is true for me, and what it is that I believe, And I feel like now that I've taken this time in solitude, I'm able to do that, and to, you know what I mean, to be able to have a different viewpoint from someone, and that not to mean that we can't interact, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, did you know that authenticity is actually a higher frequency than love?
Yes. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It holds so much power to stand in your own truth.
Totally. Yeah. And it is. But we're kind of programmed, honestly, to be people pleasers in this society. We learn to get our sense of worth from what other people think of us, and from, you know what I mean? Society tells us what to be and who to be and all of that. And so we learn to get our worth from that. So finding that from within and standing in who we authentically are is so empowering, And I find that listening to the intuition also helps us in that as well, so that we don't have to constantly look outside of us for direction, because we can have people that help us and guide us and things like that. But it's like truly, the more we tune into our intuition, that's the point, like to listen to that, because that's truly empowering. Somebody can have an outside perspective and an outside view that can help us, but then it's like tuning into and listening from within for like listening to that, I think is so empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned earlier that, like going out to old places and doing those things was like really disorienting at first. I feel like I've been in this space of isolation for the past year myself, honestly. And and when I say isolation, like, I don't know that my isolation has looked quite like yours, but, because I've still been operating in the world, but in comparison to where I had been for all of my life, I felt very called to like go inward. And I've moved, I've created some space in certain communities, and that has felt very like confusing, because it's there's also this part of me that craves community, but there's certain parts of the old aspect of community that aren't aligning right now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like vibrationally.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it is weird. It's a weird feeling to be like, I am like not fully, I don't know, integrated, but also this isn't working over here. This like other thing isn't feeling aligned anymore.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
Just feels destabilizing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that it's just it's learning to, yeah, listening to that intuitive nudge and being aware of where that's coming from. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of times it's, especially in like the circles of recovery and things, it can get very much like don't trust your own thinking. But if your thinking is in alignment with your, it's learning to listen to your intuition, you know, and the more that you get in the practice of that, it's kind of listening to those nudges. The thing that's challenging within those circles sometimes is that people aren't open to other perspectives because because they're scared of thinking outside of that. Yeah, and I understand that. You know what I mean? But it can be a challenging space to be in because it's like you're taught to think in one certain way, and anything that thinks outside of that feels like, oh no, you know, because it's like there's fear around that. Like to be open to other ways of viewing it and doing things, you know?
Well, and I think it gets labeled as like crazy or woo-woo or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which
Totally.
I think at times labeled myself as woo-woo just so people understand. And I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. No, like I'm just connected to truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
So like, yeah. So is there fear or resistance along the way, like with the Kundalini awakening process? Like, was there any resistance or like maybe wanting to go back to an old version just because maybe it felt easier?
Yeah, for sure. Also, I wanted to say this about woo woo.
Yeah.
So do you know what woo means?
No.
Okay. So, and I just learned this the other day, and I forget the thing behind the word, but woo is the source of creation. So it's the source of creation, the source of creation. So it's like people have this idea of like woo woo is like BS, but it's like, no, it means source of creation, source of creation. So I love being woo woo.
Me too. I'm witchy. I'm all.
Yeah. So, but yes, I mean, definitely at first, you know, it's, and still sometimes, you know, like I get into this. The thing is, though, that I know with my Kundalini awakening, it needed to happen at the timing that it did because it was preparation for this awakening that's happening on a collective level. You know what I mean? So that I could be in the space that I'm in and share my experience. You know, it's 111. You know, it's there is times though where I'm like, because right now it's getting a little bit better, but I've broken out so much of the societal conditioning and kind of patterns for the way that society operates. But I know that is because I meant to kind of play a role in ushering in the new paradigm and kind of new way of operating in this world. But right now it can sometimes feel that way where I'm just like, I've broken so far out of it that even the other day at an interview, I'm like, I don't know how to be anything other than they asked me these interview questions. And I'm like, I go deep and I'm just like, and I told the girl I did this interview the other day, I was like, sorry, this is my default setting now, and I don't know how to be anything other than this, you know, like, which is a beautiful thing because this is who I truly am, you know, but it's also like operating within this world is challenging. But I think for people, if there's other people that are going through this, it's like, know that if you're going through this process, it's so that you can like maybe consider that perspective. It's so that you can usher in something new. You're breaking out of those old patterns so that you can bring a new perspective, usher in a new perspective, usher in the new paradigm, kind of help to kind of be, you know, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, builder of the new earth or whatever, however you want to kind of see that.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. What do you think was the most surprising thing about going through this awakening?
That people were incredibly irritated with me. Yeah, at first. And I mean at first, because with the Kundalini awakening, that I believe that frequency that I existed at, did I see you during that? I didn't see you during that time. Okay. That frequency that I existed at for that first 4 months was so incredibly elevated because of where my frequency is at naturally, the way energy moves through me, through my character. And then on top of that, for that just blast, it's like being plugged into a light socket. So And what happens when we start to elevate in this way, because our frequency elevates, whether it's through a Kundalini awakening or whether it's just through healing, through clearing the density in our energy field, through kind of going through that process and having these perspective shifts. When we're in an elevated place like that, it brings out the shadows in others. And I didn't know that this is what was happening. And at first I was in such a like loving, just like this loving, authentic frequency. And just, I mean, I was literally, my bed was vibrating in the morning when I would wake up. It was literally like the bed was vibrating. And I would just, but then all these interactions that I was having, like I was in a traditional sober living and I was interacting with these, and people were just being so mean to me. And then I was like, and it wasn't because of anything I was saying. It was just literally like people were trying to just kind of, poke at me. But then that's also when I realized, oh my gosh, this has been happening to me my whole life, like, because it's not that it's not that I'm saying things or I'm saying things that are hate, but it's something with the frequency that happens. But I didn't expect to be met with so much kind of darkness. And that part of it was very confusing. And I didn't understand that. But now, honestly, though, that I believe that I don't want to go back to that frequency. That was such an elevation that existing, it also made sense why we forget who we truly are in this realm, because like that forgetting plays such a role in us being able to exist, because this experience is so dense and dark and it is so different than who we are. Mm-hmm. And existing in that place of remembrance, like I was fully just, oh my gosh, I remember who we are, and existing in that is like, you can't really do it here with the way that things operate, So I just think that was a very short-term thing. A lot of information came in about what I'm meant to do here and things like that during that time. And a lot of these other kind of downloads and stuff that I've kind of been able to integrate over this last couple years. But like at first I wanted to go back to that because it felt good. I was like, oh, I want to go back because internally it felt, but then now it's like, no, it's like grounding it into my humanness and into the human experience and being able to integrate it in a way that I can show up within this society, which is kind of the point that I'm at now, is kind of like integrating back into and finding out, how to operate within this society that operates so differently from the place that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, that's leads me to a great question. Like, how do you balance? Because I have had to learn this along the way too. Like, how do you balance? Like, I am having a human experience,
right?
And I also have a deep understanding that like this is not who I am, right? Like, how do you dance with with that relationship? Like when you are, maybe your buttons are pushed or if fear does come up, right? Like what do you do?
I'm trying to think. So yeah, balancing like the human and with the like remembrance. I think that it's just like I hold this awareness on a moment to moment basis that I'm not this form. I'm not this body. This is, you know what I mean? This is a temporary thing. So I find that through that and through being in that on a moment to moment basis, which I don't necessarily think that that's everyone's path to be in that on a moment to moment basis. But like my experience is that I'm living in that. So when something presents like a human thing that, somebody tries to, because I don't have a lot of fear, like, and it's to such a level that, but we operate from fear so much in this society. So a lot of times people try to project their fears onto me. And I just kind of have to, I just kind of go, okay, I understand that this person is doing, but I just don't take it on. Mm-hmm. But like balancing the human, that's probably like, it's a big challenge, to do that. And, yeah.
No, totally. Do you know anything about Mary Magdalene?
Yes. I do.
Okay. So I've been going down like the Mary Magdalene rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And there's so much power in like the gospel of Mary that was so buried.
Yeah.
And basically her and Jesus were like best friends.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. Yeah.
And
like the true story of her, not the
horror story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that they painted her out to, like, I mean, that's how what our society does.
Exactly.
Women, so.
Right. It's the suppression of the divine feminine, right?
For sure.
Which
which is also intuition, which is also its creative power. And so it makes sense that it's suppressed because it keeps us small,
right?
You know,
which is, I think, this is my perception, is that this collective evolution that we're feeling, elevation.
Evolution, elevation. It's the mix.
That we're feeling, I believe, is the rise of the divine feminine, like on a mass level, totally. Which is why I feel like so many people are being drawn to Mary Magdalene right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so, but that was Jesus' very best friend. She was there for his resurrection, for his when he died on the cross, and all of these major like moments. But she was so suppressed because her message was about Christ consciousness.
For sure.
That the kingdom is in here, right? That everything that we need is like we create our own reality, right? Everything that science is proving now, right, is what Jesus was telling her that he didn't tell the other disciples because they weren't at a capacity to understand it.
Absolutely.
Which is like such a reflection of what's going on.
100%. And yes. And I honestly, like, I see that pattern show up in a lot of other ways too, where it's like, I actually believe that, yes, and that's what Jesus was saying too, was like trying to awaken. But then the people in the Bible this is the way that I see it. When it's like Jesus was this like enlightened, awakened being that was, trying to share this message of, whoa, this thing I'm connected to also lives within you, but the outsiders were perceiving his message through their lens. Right. And so it's like they weren't him. They didn't have the awakening that he had. So what they were doing is perceiving his message through their lens. This is how it's like the telephone game. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Things get passed down, and everything that's in the Bible was people's perception of what he was saying. You know what I mean? This is also another thing that I see with recovery as well. This is a pattern. This is where I see, once you start seeing patterns, and I believe that's available to everybody, you start tuning into energy and you recognize patterns, you can see where these patterns repeat. And I believe in recovery as well. Like, Bill W. had this awakening experience, and then that awakening experience has been he was trying to relay this message, but then he also tried to put it in a black and white way of saying things. You know what I mean? And so a lot of times, like, what's being perceived and it can turn into an ego thing, because it's like, I used the program to build the ego at one point, and it's something that can very easily get into that. It's not saying anything bad about that. I'm never saying anything bad about the program. I'm really not. No, but I'm just seeing that a lot of times, if somebody kind of has a spiritual, and then I believe though, he was trying to get his message, which was really just as Jesus's message was, right. I believe, tune into this within, start listening to your internal guidance. Mm-hmm. Like there's no stipulations on tuning into the truth within and tuning into God. It's a moment-to-moment experience, and I believe that that's actually what he was trying to say, but it was the 1930s, and he was really trying to put it in a black and white format. That black and white format works really well for a lot of people, but I also feel that a lot of people are kind of feeling this. There's a certain point in evolution where it kind of it can start to not resonate, but it's learning to, but it's also, I always think of that page in the book as well, which I know we're not talking about recovery necessarily, but, okay. But, where it talks about just listening to, eventually you start to get into that place where you listen to the internal, you listen to, to intuitive guidance.
You come to rely on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, truly.
Yeah. And I think that brings up a good point too, right? Like there wasn't language that we have today for the experience that Bill had during this awakening, right?
Absolutely.
Like we have the language for it.
Absolutely. And the language wasn't there. Jesus, like all of that, you know what I mean? Like there was, like being able to explain this is so much easier now, especially with quantum physics and everything kind of being where it's at.
It up,
Yeah.
the physics, all of it. Well, and I think that that's what is making some people buy into it more, right? The people who I can buy into science, but I can't buy into this woo-woo,
It's all the same though. It's all the same. And literally the more that you kind of like, for me, the more that I just allowed myself to see like, whoa, it's all the same. I studied Eastern philosophy. I studied Hinduism, Buddhism. I started getting into Jesus's teaching after my awakening because I had all this stuff about Jesus coming through. One of the main things was I never wanted people to worship me. Because what people are worshiping, when somebody awakens to this truth within, like we learn to externalize it but it's actually a piece of you, like when you see something, when that awakens within somebody, it's like, I find that people are drawn to it and people get attached to it a lot of times, or they end up worshiping it. But what you're attached to and what you're seeing is the truth. And it's the way that it's moving through them. You know what I mean? It's not, it lives within. It's just about tuning into that. And that's what I believe he was trying to say is like, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God is within.
Yeah.
Everything lives within. We're expressions of each other. Like we are each other, all of it. Everything is everything. It's all mirroring,
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, I love it. And I think to your point, right? Like what I see in you, right, when I was looking at your content is only because that stuff is coming up in me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like we're just reflecting light back to each other.
Yeah.
And what I'm drawn to is because that is awakening in me.
It helps people remember. Yeah.
Totally. We're just walking each other home.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
Which was like the whole idea of this podcast is the walk home to ourselves, walking home to ourselves. So let's see. Well, I guess we kind of answered this, but how have your relationships or sense of community shifted through this process? Like how do you find community today?
I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah. I love that. It's a great answer.
Yeah. I don't know. That's actually because right now what I'm feeling is what I'm being called to is to create that, that's kind of my next step right now is getting back out into the world. And because this period of solitude started in December of last year, and now it's like, it's getting back. That's what I'm feeling called to do, is to kind of get back and build some sort of community. It is still kind of like I'm in this kind of in between space where it's not that I it's just kind of like a misalignment with so many different things. So it's kind of this weird space where I'm like, a lot of times I prefer to be around people that are in a space where they're kicked down a lot, or like people that are really struggling and in a dark place. I find that it's easier for me sometimes to connect with that than it is somebody who is in a place where they're very identified still with the things of this world, so it's but it's not that I can't exist in that space, and I'm never judging, but I think that there is a perception a lot of time, but it's just like, I'm still figuring that out, kind of. And that process, like for people kind of going through the awakening process, I think that it is, but it's just following the intuition, and it's always coming back into the moment and listening from within. And that's what I continue to do. I continue to go back in and be like, okay, I know I'm being called out of this period of solitude right now. I don't know what that looks like, but I follow the intuitive nudges. I follow you know what I mean? It's like, you asked me to do this felt right. And just kind of, doing this interview that I did the other day, it's just kind of taking those steps forward and trusting, following the little breadcrumbs, following the signs, and trusting that will kind of make sense in perfect time.
Yeah. And that makes me think about the part of the conversation we had earlier before we started, where so many of us get stuck on the how and the what it's supposed to look like. Yeah. And we don't end up fulfilling like the destiny, we don't end up getting where we're supposed to go because we're constantly like blocking ourselves by the how and the why,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, we were talking about that. Like, because we are so conditioned to look at things and our society operates within like, you need to come up with a very specific plan and it needs to look this way. And then you take these action steps to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like stepping into this space is more focusing on the elevation, you know, focusing on the healing, focusing because the more that we do that, we tune into the intuition and we start to come into the moment more. And so like the more that we tune into that, we can start to listen to that guidance about you know, what steps, and then things start to present. The more that we elevate things, as long as there's some sort of like forward motion, you know what I mean? Like for me, it's like, that's what we were talking about with the content creation. It's like part of that at first was like, oh, that feels so cringy or whatever. And it's not something that I really want. I don't really want to be a content creator, but it was, that was my intuition was telling me, this is what you're meant to do. Put your voice out there in this way. And doing that as well, doing the content creation has helped in my own elevation and also solidifying my perspective. A lot of times the divine is talking to me through me in a way. Like it's literally because there's power in saying things out loud as well. And so a lot of times the messages are for me in that, but then it's a signal, and it's like putting out this little signal for everything and everyone that is in alignment with where I'm at, you know? Yeah, but it's like, it is challenging because it goes against the way the society has programmed us to operate, that we need to know all the details.
Yeah. And
still there's people that think but I'm like, it's going to make sense. It's starting to make sense for me. The pieces, I'm starting to see the puzzle pieces, things are coming together.
Yep. Totally. You're so right, because they say we need to be prepared. You need to save. You need to do this. You need to do that in order for things to happen. And it's really just saying like, I don't trust God. I don't trust the divine unfolding.
Yeah.
You know, like, but when I was saying this the other day, which is, it's so in line, but there's this guy on TikTok and he's a kid actually, and he interviews all these millionaires, self-made millionaires, not like people who are, you know, and the thing that is the common theme in every single one of their talks is when he's asking questions of like, how did you get there? They all say, I didn't know how, but I listened to the call, and I wasn't thinking about what it was going to be like when it didn't work out. I just did it. You know, it was like, so I took a loan out. I did this. I did that. Like I took the action and I didn't worry about the how. Right.
Exactly.
That is like anchoring into certainty. You know? Like,
yeah, for sure. And trusting that. It's like the same thing too with like, you look at like the most successful films and things like, it's like, what's the formula? There's not really a most people with the most successful films will say, and this is why it tells the future as well. A lot of really successful, because they're tuned into something beyond, you know, they'll say it came through me. It's not because it's like, well, I want the formula of how you created that.
Right.
Tune in. Yeah. That's it. You know, tune in and start listening to that. That is, and take those actions when we start to listen to the intuition, taking those actions, even because the conscious mind wants to come in and say like, oh no, but that doesn't make sense. But it's, I always choose when my mind comes in and says that, I go, no, but that's not that. My intuition told me this. So even though that doesn't make sense, I'm going to take that action.
Absolutely. I love it. That's exactly what I did with this podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what? You want me to do a podcast? Like, I don't want to be like exposed like that or have to work through like the fear of rejection or like, you know, and it was like, well, you don't have to. That's the thing. Like, you don't have to. You just do it.
Right.
You know, like,
totally.
Like, yes, is there stuff you have to technically work through? Sure. But also just by deciding and doing it, like you're working through it.
Exactly. And nothing is ever a failure unless you choose to see it as a failure.
Right.
Everything is a stepping stone. You know, there's been many things. It's like me starting the nonprofit that I started and everything. It's like, you know, there's people from the outside that would go, oh, you failed. But it's like, no, like, I don't see it as failure. It was all stepping stones. The divine timing wasn't right. It's all about the way that you choose to see it. And the people that step into the most abundance and success, I find really like will tell you, you got to be willing to fail,
Yep.
like you got to be willing, and it's about how do you walk through that, how do you hold yourself through that?
Yeah.
And if you choose to see, I don't see it as failure because I look at every single sin and I go, every single failure, and I go, what is it? What is the deeper teaching in that? What did I learn from that experience? And a lot of times people will just give up, and for me, a lot of people were like, when I started doing content creation, people were irritated by I could feel it. I'm very sensitive to energy. I could just feel that, oh, who do you think you are type of thing. You know what I mean? But it's like, and nobody was liking any of my stuff, but I was just like, I'm not doing this for likes though. And that's what I had to remind myself is like, I'm letting the divine flow through me, and this is what I'm meant to be doing. So I'm not doing it for applause, and I'm not doing it for likes. And then the more that I've allowed myself to do that, it's for the people that need to hear it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's it's like learning to, but for me too, I was prepared. It's like all that rejection prepared me to rejected, got pushed me into a place where it's like, okay, I've got to learn to stand on my own, and be okay with like, because when you stand in who you authentically are and you kind of allow this energy to flow through you, it's it can come with rejection. People aren't used to authenticity. We're used to pleasantries. We're used to all of these things. So it can feel a little jarring, like, oh my gosh, because I was thinking about that the other day too. The more authentic you are, like, because at first I was like, why are people so irritated with this? But it's like, because we're used to, like, if you invite me over and you say, hey, I want to go out to the pool today. Like, my response to that today wouldn't be my people pleasing response, which would have been, oh, well, I don't know because, I would have made up some excuse, but I would be like, you know what? I'm just not feeling that. Yeah. I don't want to do, which on the other end, somebody can take personally, like, oh no, well so it can be irritating, because people are like, oh my gosh, but you're rejecting me, but it's not personal. It's that I'm taking care of myself,
right?
And that I'm not, and that I just really don't want to do that right now. And I'm being honest about it, but like we end up like getting, because we get our sense of worth from what other people are thinking, what they're saying, then it's like, oh no, this person doesn't like me, but it's not that at all.
No,
it's not personal. You know what I mean? So the more we step into authenticity though, because we operate so much from that, like people just kind of, they say things that they don't mean. And that's another thing that was confusing throughout my life, being so sensitive to energy. Energy never lies. And so the world is very confusing when people are telling you words. There's so much room for miscommunication and because you can lie, but your energy doesn't lie. So it's like, the more you tune into energy, you can feel it. And the world is very confusing. I remember that as I was growing up too, I was always like, why is everyone lying all the time? Because because I would feel the energy, and I'm like, and healing is really starting to tune into what is true, like what is true for me and what is real, and like stepping out of that, like saying things that we don't mean, and like tuning in and learning to stand in what it is that I truly believe, what it is that's my point of view. Like we're the same consciousness experience, like, expressed from different points of view. So we're all meant to have different points of view. Like, and I feel like that's kind of the new paradigm we're moving into, is just like seeing that we all see the world a little differently, and we can learn from each other rather than trying to force everyone to see things in the same way. That's not what we're meant to see the world differently, and we can learn from each other's points of view. It's just like we've been in this pattern so long where it's like, I need you to see things the way that I do in order to be okay.
Yeah.
When it's like, I feel like it's just so much more interesting when we can just kind of learn from each other.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful, because I'm walking through that exact thing myself right now, where I'm just really watching how the personality wants to over explain, but then I stop that and I'm like, no, I don't have time today, or I don't want to do that, or I don't, you know what I mean? Like, and how someone's reaction to it, like you're saying, is really none of my business.
It isn't, yeah.
And it's also not about me.
Right.
You know?
And two, I actually find that a lot of times, like what I found through all of the darkness that I faced, it brought my shadows to the surface. And while I didn't understand it in the moment, it actually helps those shadows come to light. So sometimes like that insecurity that you brought up for somebody else, like whatever they do it, but it's like, it's kind of bringing that stuff up for people, you know, without the intention of doing that. It's not like I'm gonna, but you know what I mean? Like us, like when we choose to, that is who we're meant to be. When we stand in who we truly are and we're honoring what is true for us and we're being our authentic selves, that's who we were created to be. Why would we be anything other than that? You know, and you're right. You can't control. And believe me, I was people pleasing nearly killed me more than any substance ever has.
Same.
You know what I mean? Like it literally, like I was dying behind it. So, and you know, putting yourself out here in this way too, that is another like way of healing people pleasing too. That kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Putting myself out there and creating content, knowing that, you know,
not everybody's gonna like
yeah, exactly. And they're gonna make up their stories about whatever, and that's fine. You know, like I can allow them to do that and know that I'm listening to the truest part of me. And yeah, that's super empowering to be in that place.
Yeah. Well, you kind of touched a little bit on it earlier, but where is your heart's desire in terms of like where you see yourself in the future? It doesn't have to look specific, but like, what are you drawn to? I know you talked about nonprofit or maybe like jails or something, you know, like what?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely, I feel that my path is a lot about, because I experienced like being on the verge of homelessness, living in my car, all of that. And I'm so grateful for all of it because it shifted my perspective in such a way to be in that position and see the way that society treats these people, and to see, because like, it's like God, the divine, was putting me in this position to see through their eyes and see the way that people treat. I mean, like literally, I asked for somebody to call an ambulance one time because I was so dehydrated, and I every time I would drink water, like I didn't have a car, I didn't have access to water, I was dehydrated, and I'm out on the streets, and I was asking people to call an ambulance for me, and they were laughing at me and telling, you know, because there's this automatic. And what's crazy is it's like, especially people that say they follow Jesus and things like that, it's like that is Jesus. If you're looking for Jesus, he's on the streets, you know, like literally that is, and he made that very clear as well. You know what I mean? But it's like, I just feel drawn to those people because I know that I walked through that for that specific purpose. And also people coming out of prison and jail and things like that. It's like, we're going to get so mad that our society gets so upset that people continue repeating these patterns, but everything is set up for failure. And I have seen that. The court system wants you to fail. It's literally set up so that you fail. And our class system and all of it depends on people staying at the bottom, you know? So it makes sense that it just kind of keeps people in these loops. And it's crazy because people go into prison and there is nothing to help people elevate, escape their patterns, to heal. And then then they have to learn these survival mechanisms while they're in there in order to keep themselves safe. And then it's like, well, why do you act like that when you get, and of course they go back to the same
systemic issue.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. So I just feel like I feel really drawn to like creating the nonprofit is really about helping those people to escape stuck patterns and to do it in a different, like to do it in a way that is more holistic. That's not, that's not the traditional kind of way of looking at things. Because I found for me, like even with traditional therapy kind of stopped working for me very early on. Like it never, cause it's just the way that I am and the way that the level of self-awareness that I kind of already had. I was just, therapy was kind of confusing. I needed to do things that kind of worked with the subconscious, and looking at that, and looking at how I escape stuck patterns rather than, I'm not saying anything bad about therapy. I'm just saying that therapy can bring an awareness of patterns, but then you stay in those patterns, like, it's like, okay, I know that this is what I do. I always do this but it's like helping people to really escape, to look into the subconscious, because the subconscious is really what's driving, our actions without us really even consciously knowing why we're doing that. So anything that kind of tunes into that. So that's kind of the vision for that, for Uncovering Truth, for the nonprofit, is creating these healing centers that really would be for everybody. That's kind of what I see is, and working more like kind of, run by like healers and light workers, things that have been through the trenches of the darkness and all of it, to help, because I find that holds so much more power. And that's something that happens like with recovery as well, because it really does. It holds way more power than somebody who read something in a book, who is seeing. And that's across the board with everything. I feel if you've been through something, you just have a greater understanding than anyone who has studied it, just obsessively studied something. It's like life is our teacher, whenever we choose to see it in that way. And all of my experiences with that, I know were for purpose, so that I could kind of step into and create this thing. But that's what I see. That's where I see it going. I see like, that's the main thing. I feel like that's kind of that is the main thing. And then I think more things will make sense through that. But
yeah, I see that very clearly for you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like watching you and the passion. I'm like, how could it not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how could it not? So beautiful. And I believe that the people who have stories like ours bring so much power and depth to situations like that, or like experiences like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So where can people find you if they want to find you?
So mostly TikTok is the one that I do right now. So and my handle on there is this_Justin_Stone. Justin Stone on Facebook. I have multiple Facebook accounts that I can't get rid of, but and which I've started sharing. I do something a little different on Facebook. It's wild territory. And Instagram is also this_Justin_Stone, and that same name also on YouTube. YouTube, really though, I feel like I'm going to go a different direction with that. It's really just my TikTok videos. TikTok is my main thing though.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about that is that I feel the most out of all the platforms, I feel I don't even want to say safest, but TikTok feels the safest.
100%. It does. Yeah.
That like, it's just like so programmed to my algorithm and what I'm like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's definitely, it kind of puts you in these little containers, which is a beautiful thing. And also there's part of me that's like, I kind of wish it would reach different audiences sometimes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it also does keep it a little bit of like a safer container where people are not. So I noticed that for sure on TikTok, and with lots of other, especially people that are kind of on the healing and awakening journey and things that say like, oh, well, yeah, because they've tried to be on Facebook, and there's just so much hate that comes on. It
gives me anxiety being on Instagram or Facebook. I noticed in my body.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that way on TikTok. It's so weird.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what brings you joy these days? Like, what excites you?
Yeah, what excites me? Joy. I mean, I feel like the joy kind of just flows through me, like it's, and that's really what this period of solitude has been about, is tuning into that whenever it feels at times like I'm kind of trapped in this box that I've been in with no way to kind of get out of it. But then to find joy in that space is like everything else is a bonus, so that's kind of what this period has been about for me. But my dog right now, like my dog that I got like 6 months ago, that honestly has been one of the biggest challenges. Like I thought I was going to get this dog and it was going to be like Marley, and it's literally, he is the exact opposite. But he's a reflection of me. It literally.
I saw your video about him.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just kind of like, he's such a free, expansive spirit. And it's just like, so it's like kind of learning to, he's been a huge challenge, but working with him and seeing that sometimes the most challenging things bring us the biggest payoffs, because he's also one of the most loving and caring, dogs. And so, yeah, it's just that. And he brings me so much joy. Even though he's challenging, he's also kept me so grounded in the earth realm too, because it's like through this time as well that I've been there, it's like he has so much energy. So I get out and walk him every day. It's kept me outside, getting, getting sunlight and all that, I think is good, so that I don't get trapped in just being inside all the time. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I definitely feel like we're on a very similar vibration. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing how your life unfolds and like what happens next.
Yes.
Me too. So everyone, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Stone.
Yes.
Until next time, may the cord that binds us to one another and to spirit remind us that we are never alone, always guided, and always home.